Let's go to one political clown already doing his best to turn this tragedy into his own personal circus. Texas do-nothing Beto O'Rourke today interrupted a Uvalde news conference on the shooting to make the town's nightmare all about himself. Disgusting. Watch.
Pass the mic to Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick.
Governor, I have to say something.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me.
It was after Santa Fe High School.
Sit down.
You're out of line and an embarrassment.
Sit down and don't play this stuff.
The next shooting is right now, and you are doing nothing.
No, he needs to get his ass out of here. This isn't the place to talk this over.
This is totally predictable when you...
Sir, you're out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Please leave this auditorium. I can't believe you're a sick son that would come to a deal like this to make a political issue.
Yeah, that's Town Mayor Don McLaughlin. And as you know, Beto is running for governor against Abbott this November. Will Democrats celebrate this selfish, disgusting stunt? So incredibly insensitive. The panel is back. Ned Ryun, Kevin Walling, and Jeff Deist. So, Ned, what does this do to Beto's chances in November?
Well, it just highlights that Robert Francis O'Rourke, as a stoned furry, is a terrible candidate. This political stunt was disgusting. I mean, it was loathsome, but I would argue that Biden's performance last night was loathsome as well, using a tragedy to try and advance your political goals, because all they really seem to want is power. I think Robert Francis O'Rourke is going to get crushed this fall by Abbott. I don't think all he did today was prove that he is a complete clown. But it is a shame that we cannot have a rational conversation. Democrats immediately want to go to, we want to have gun control. Republicans, we want to have a conversation about, yeah, we want to do something. I think the fact that we have only put $150 million since 2018 into school security, while sending $40 billion to a corrupt Eastern European nation, I think we have misplaced priorities. Sure, I'd like to harden up schools. I'd like to have more armed guards. I'd like there to be a lot more done to actually have security for schools. But Democrats all want to go for, let's get rid of the Second Amendment and do gun control. And I think they'd want to have Australian type laws.
Yes.
That does not lead to an honest conversation to have real meaningful solutions in the short term.
Yeah, it's incredible to me, Kevin, that, obviously every state is a different political context. And Austin is not Texas, but Beto runs around talking about confiscating guns in a state that is probably more adherent to the Second Amendment than arguably any other. And all he has are stunts and antics. He's incredibly unserious. And as an avid and confessed confiscator, how could he possibly win statewide election at this point in time in Texas?
Well, Texans will ultimately decide whether what we saw today is a benefit to the community in terms of pushing back on what the governor was saying. They will decide that ultimately. But listen, to Ned's point, we've got to tone down the rhetoric, obviously, on both sides. We got very close in 2013 with Manchin-Toomey, with agreement with Republicans and Democrats on background checks. I think your conversation with Steve Hilton was so important in terms of what he described as red flag laws, where, if someone is struggling with a mental illness, there's no way that they should have access to a firearm. Or if they are formally convicted of domestic abuse and domestic violence, those guns can be taken away. The fact that in 2020, the leading cause of death for children in this country for the first time is homicide by a gun or suicide by a gun should startle all of us and make us have some kind of national conversation that you have now, Kennedy, every night talking about this. But we've got to come together as Republicans and Democrats. Antics won't work, sideshows won't work, but addressing the problem concretely and directly hopefully will.
So, Jeff, is there a connection here between the conversation that we're having at this point in our history about abortion and the conversation we're also having about gun violence? Have we lost the plot as a society in terms of what it means to be pro-life?
I think we have. I think obviously there's a sickness in the culture. There's no question about that. There's a lot of parallels here with abortion laws because we talk about toning down the rhetoric. I think the way to tone down the rhetoric is to get over this idea that there needs to be one uniform set of laws on abortion or guns or all kinds of social issues for all 50 states, for 330 million people, some of them who live in very sparsely populated rural areas, some of them who live in dense cities. I think federalization and centralization, I think putting these things under the auspices of the Supreme Court's been a disaster. I mean, I look at Beto, I mean, to me, he looks like some sort of alt-rock guy from Park Slope or something. I don't get how he runs in Texas, but the fact is that there's plenty of people, especially with Austin booming, there's plenty of people in Texas who probably agree with him. We need to find a way to ring fence this stuff. And I really think this reading of, especially the Bill of Rights, under the incorporation doctrine, that they all apply to states. I think that's really been disastrous for federalism in this country. I mean, obviously, this is a multifaceted thing. We've got sick kids. We've got the COVID lockdowns. We've got psychological issues. I mean, this is a very
if I can add on top of that, we also have a homeless crisis plaguing major cities in this country, and we also have no problem throwing adults away. It's not just kids. It's not just boys. It's not just unborn babies. It's across the board, and we need to address those things honestly because there's a correlation with all of it. You guys, I really appreciate you tackling all of this, being respectful and thoughtful. Ned, Kevin, and Jeff, thank you all so much.
Thank you, Kennedy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kennedy.
Coming up, sparks flying in the trial against former Clinton lawyer Michael Sussman. Will Hillary or her cronies ever be held accountable for the Russia collusion hoax? Molly Hemingway here with the latest. She's next.